Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to be getting started in just a minute, but in the meantime, feel free to hang out. We're going to be getting started shortly. Just going to let folks trickle in from the waiting room. Want to make sure that we have everybody here before we go ahead and get started. So hang out for just a little while, and then we will be getting started in about a minute. In the meantime, feel free to enjoy the dulcet tones of my waiting room voice as we wait for everybody to join us. For anybody just now hopping in, we're going to be getting started in just about 30 seconds. Thank you for being here. Really, really excited to have you here and to dig into our session shortly. I'm still seeing folks trickle in from the waiting room, so we'll give them a couple more seconds and then we will go ahead and boogie. All right, I am going to go ahead and get us started. Hello, everybody. My name is Brinton Botkin. I use she, her pronouns, and I lead student marketing efforts here at Handshake, which includes hosting lots of these fabulous student events. I might look familiar to some of you if you've attended any of these events in the past. Really excited to have you here today. A couple of quick notes before we get started with our session. We're going to have about 20 minutes of structured discussion, and then we'll save about 10 minutes at the end for questions from you, the audience. So feel free to add any questions to the Q&A box throughout this session. We will do our best to get to as many as we can, but apologies if we don't get to them all. We tend to get a lot of questions during these cool role spotlight events. And you also won't see anybody else's questions until we mark them as answered. So please don't think you're just like shouting into the void and we're ignoring you. I promise we're not. We will do our best to get to as many as we can. So we know that it can be very daunting to see all of the different openings during fall recruitment across so many different industries. You might be wondering what you want to major in, what you want to pursue. So this event is part of our Cool Career Spotlight series that is basically meant to help folks get firsthand accounts of some of the cool different positions that are out there. We're featuring folks in different disciplines, industries, and today's panelist is a production test engineer at Pratt and Whitney. And with that, Anthony, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share so that everybody can see your face. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe tell us a bit about roles that you've held in the past and what being a production test engineer entails?
Absolutely, yeah. First and foremost, I wanted to thank the Handshake team. I used to use Handshake when I was in school as well, and it was a really helpful tool. So it's awesome to be here and support this. As for myself, I'm in academia, so I went to the University of Rhode Island where I studied mechanical engineering. Now I'm going for my master's, where I'm studying at Cornell University. I'm doing that part-time in engineering management. Uh, I say part-time because I'm also working full-time for RTX, previously known as Raytheon Technologies, specifically the Pratt Whitney division. For those of you that may not know, Pratt Whitney, we are the manufacturer and developer of military engines. And you can see in my background here, we've got one of the fighter jets that our engines go on, and also commercial engines. So many of you that have flown, there is a good chance that the engine on that plane was Pratt and Whitney. So
Very.
a little bit about my experience, I know you asked, was I was in a rotational program to start my career. So that gave me the opportunity to try a different disciplines early on and really gain breadth in a wider range. First, I was in structures engineering, where I learned a lot about analyzing our parts and making sure our parts are safe. Then I was in manufacturing engineering, where it's really about how do we make these parts. And now I'm in test engineering, where we make sure that the final product is working properly so it is safe and reliable for the public.
I love it. I love that you got to have all of those different experiences and kind of figure out your preferred flavor of engineering. What a cool program. I'd love to transition into maybe some day-to-day. I know you mentioned that you've tried a couple of different types of engineering in your rotational program. So let's start with first things first. What does your average day-to-day look like as an engineer in the aerospace field?
Okay, awesome. So it really depends on where you are specifically. So I'll talk about test engineering, which a day-to-day in test engineering is consistently changing. Every day is a new experience. You're learning new things. But here's really the general format. So you come in and a lot of our facilities and a lot of other engineering facilities, they work on three shifts. So you have first shift, you have second shift, and you have third shift. So we're running 24 hours, pushing as much product out as we can. And you come in and you have your turnover where you get with, if you're on first shift, you get with third shift, and you really just make sure that everything that's going on at the plant is read across so that everybody's on the same page. It's really critical. Now, for me, at test engineer, we have our test cells. This is where we get the engine, we run them in the test cells, and we make sure that they're safe and functioning properly. Sometimes we'll have to troubleshoot, so there'll be a problem that we need to fix, and we'll go through the engine, we'll make sure that everything's working properly. And then from there, at the end of the day, we'll have our turnover again. And then make sure that we leave the next shift ready to really do everything they need to do in order to do their job for the day.
I love that. 24 hours. I mean, I feel like that's so much productivity going on. Thank you so much. And I'd love to pivot a little bit. I'm seeing that we're already getting some questions in the Q&A, but I'm going to table those until we get to the Q&A portion. In the meantime, I would love to talk about some skills and maybe misconceptions. Are there any skills that you rely on in your day-to-day right now that surprised you, or that folks who are watching might not think about when they think about a career in engineering?
Okay, yeah. So thinking back to like what I thought before I got into industry, I really thought about technical skills. You need to be super technical and you need to really know how to do all of those analysis methods. And while that's super important, I would say that the simple skill of communication is absolutely huge in your career. And not as in just talking to people that you're friends with, or it's about talking to people that have been through all walks of life. So different levels of communication. If you have the skill to be able to talk to anybody, it will really take you far in your career. And I would say anyone could develop that. Anyone could be good at communicating. It takes practice. It's like a muscle. So I challenged myself early on to just make conversation wherever I can, wherever it may be. You know, those moments where, you could sit back in your shell and kind of just do your own thing, or you can engage with somebody random that you don't really have to. Uh,
Mhm.
it's okay to sometimes go back in your shell. It's really up to you. But if you want to develop that skill, push yourself and put yourself out there and just talk to people and grow that muscle. So that's what I would say is a really critical skill that could take you far in your career.
I love it. As an introvert who now hosts conversations publicly with people I've never met before all the time, I fully agree. Practicing communication and putting yourself out there and kind of building that muscle, it really does get easier the more you give yourself those situations. So I love it. And okay, let's play a game of Mythbusters. I would love to talk about misconceptions. Are there any common misconceptions that you see floating around about aerospace engineering that you want to clear up? Maybe any I don't know, myths that you want to bust about your work?
For sure. Yeah. I think that sometimes, especially early on in aerospace engineering, it could be kind of intimidating. Especially the word, right? We think about it has aero and space in it. Space is so complex. It's just intimidating. And what I could say is you don't need a degree in aerospace engineering to be in the field of aerospace engineering. At a lot of companies, especially ours, RTX, there are disciplines, all different types, from quality to manufacturing to design to industrial. There is just so many different types of work that you can do. And I mean, for me, coming as mechanical, I really, any of those that I just named, design, quality, manufacturing, you could get a position in any of those and really grow what you want to be, what really makes you feel fulfilled. So I would say if you think that it's not in your wheelhouse to be in the aerospace industry because you maybe have a mechanical or even chemistry, I mean, we have coatings on a lot of our parts. We have our fuel. I mean, really, there's a broad range of skills and technical expertise that the aerospace and field needs to excel.
I love it. I love that, you can kind of apply the things that you've learned. And I'm seeing some questions as well for Q&A that I'm really excited to get to. And that takes me to kind of the inspiration for your career, right? Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to become an engineer, specifically in the aerospace, realm? And does what you're doing today align with what you were looking for when you kind of first got started in maybe college or in your career?
Okay, so what I could say is when I was a kid, there was two things that I always wanted to be. One was a baseball player, and the other one was an aerospace engineer. So that was early on. But then as I started to get older and I learned new things and I was exposed to new things, that started to change. I didn't really know what I wanted to be. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this now, you might have the same question. You thought you wanted to be something at one point, but now it's kind of changing. I mean, I found out pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be a baseball player for the Yankees. I found out that out pretty quickly. But as I started to learn at school, I really made sure that I just tried new things. And what ultimately happened for me is that where I ended up aligned with where I thought I wanted to be at the beginning. But needless to say, it really, I could have seen it going either way about just learning what I liked. And I wouldn't have been surprised if maybe that it didn't work out where I was in aerospace industry. Ultimately, I'm really happy though where I landed. And it's an incredible industry. So much to learn, so many new discoveries to find. And yeah, so that's where I'm at now and where I started.
There's still time for baseball if you decide you want to. No, I love it. I think that something that's really interesting to me and to some folks in the chat who I saw asking about kind of your current work-life balance. You mentioned that you're also pursuing your master's degree part-time while you're working. Have there been any challenges in navigating that balance? Have you faced any kind of roadblocks on your path that you've had to ultimately overcome?
Yeah, I would say pursuing a master's degree is really, really valuable. And like anything new, it's going to be an adjustment to what you're doing currently. So once I started my master's degree, doing full-time work as well at full capability, you need to really learn how to adjust the way you approach things. And what I found was that it really came down to concentration and focusing. And for all of you who are still in school, this could be applicable to what you do on a day to day. For me, even after a long day of work, when I come home and I have those 2 to 3 hours to focus on school, whatever it may be, I make sure that those hours I am completely honed in on my work. And that's eliminating distractions. I mean, the first key was turning off the phone, leaving it in another room. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but turning it off, leaving it in another room, and staying really honed in on what you need to accomplish. I would say for me, going to RTX, something that's really beneficial is that we have the Scholar program. So RTX actually funds our pursuing of our degrees and encourages us to get those degrees, which I mean, that's been really incredible. And I could see how a concern for somebody, and could have answered this question differently, would be financially, right? How do I keep up with that without making it harder for me in the long run, as well as being able to handle that right now. And there are plenty of companies that will pay you to get your degrees, RTX being one of them. And I know RTX really pays pretty much full amount too. So that it's an awesome program to be a part of.
That is such a cool benefit, and definitely really awesome opportunity. I did an event yesterday with some folks who work for Viasat who mentioned that they have a tuition assistance program for folks who work for, so it's a really great benefit that I think more and more employers are exploring. And so you should definitely, putting on my little handshake hat, while you're looking for jobs and opportunities on Handshake, you should be looking out for benefits like that that are listed in the roles, because I think that's such an opportunity and way to better yourself as you continue to grow. So amazing. Thank you. I would love to dial back a little bit. There are a lot of folks in the audience who are thinking about pursuing their own careers, and maybe kind of putting themselves out there for the first time in an engineering role. Do you have any tips for folks out there who are looking to find that first job in engineering, or even specifically in the aerospace industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an awesome question. I will say, I do understand how daunting it is sometimes to put yourself out there and really start this search. My tip is you've got to utilize and grow your network. When they say it's cliche, but when they say your network is your net worth, it really holds true, especially when you're looking for opportunities. And now with platforms like Handshake and being able to utilize those social media tools, it makes it so much easier to put yourself out there. I guess I could think about an example of put your headspace, say you were the CEO of an engineering firm and you had to hire a new hire. Now you have 101 applicants. Now, 100 of those applicants are represented by 100 pieces of paper on your desk, 100 application. But one of the applicants out of the 101 is somebody who went to the firm, spoke with the person at the front, brought their resume, talked about how their skills are applicable to the role, and put themselves out there. I can tell you, if that person that went in is qualified, they're going to get the position. And now this is practical real life, but we have the ability now because of platforms like Handshake where we can do this completely online. And that's keeping your resume up to date, your Handshake profile up to date, and finding those recruiters, pairing that with a job opportunity you found on their website, and then reaching out saying, hey, I found this opportunity. I think that my skills in XYZ could be applicable and I could provide value in this opportunity. Do you have the opportunity to maybe schedule a quick phone call within your nearest availability? And I'll tell you this, you might reach out 30 times and you hear back once. But really, all that matters is that one time because you get one foot in the door, that could mean your whole career right there. So put yourself out there, take those extra steps, communicate with as many people as possible, and utilize those social media platforms.
Yeah, I love that advice. And it really only takes one yes, right? It takes that one person and standing out to that one person and making a real connection. And I love that you mentioned, Handshake as a way that you can kind of take that extra networking step. I would also say it's a really good opportunity if you're posting on the feed, if you're putting yourself out there on Handshake through kind of things beyond the bullet points on your resume. It's a really good way to demonstrate who you are as a whole person, as a whole candidate when folks are looking at your profile. So thank you for that. Okay, I know we talked about communication being a really valuable skill and that being something that you thought was quite unexpected about your life as an engineer. If you could wave a magic wand and you could grant every intern or new hire in your field one skill, what would it be and why?
Okay. New hire, intern. Okay. So this is another soft skill I'm gonna give. And then after I'm gonna give another skill that's a little bit more technical that you could start to grow as you go. I would say active listening is so important. I mean, you come into a new job, you're fresh, you're new. People might have been there for 30 years, people there for 5 years. You're the new person. And your ability to show the people around you that you're willing to learn, that you're listening to them and understanding what they're saying could be so valuable in building your reputation early on. And active listening includes reciprocating what somebody's telling you. So if you were teaching me a little bit about Handshake works and the way that the profile works, I would really reiterate what you're saying and make sure that we're on the same page. So just listening, making sure you pay attention to what people are saying, making people who are communicating with you feel valued. That is super important, especially early on. I would say a little bit more technical skill. If you think about the way that the industry is shifting, it's really focusing on utilizing big data in order to make our decisions. So if I was to wave that magic wand and give everybody one skill, a little bit more technical, I would say the ability to read data, understand the patterns in the data, and then be able to make data-driven decisions through those patterns, which really gives people a lot of credibility and respect when they're able to make those suggestions. And it could go a long way. So that would be my suggestion, to try to develop those skills as you go through your career.
I love it. And I think that those skills are really important, across industries too. I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
for anybody that's kind of maybe on a winding path or still figuring out their future, I think those are really critical skills across the board. So thank you. Okay, perfect timing. Looks like we have about 10 minutes for some of the Q&A submissions that have rolled in. I would love to talk a little bit about, you mentioned the kind of tactics that you have for balancing your master's degree while you're working. I think more broadly, you've obviously got a lot going on. You're working full time, you're doing school. Do you have a good sense of work-life balance? Are you able to kind of unplug? And do you have any tips for anybody who might be kind of trying to find that balance for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I've been able to structure my work-life balance is I split my week and my weekends. So during the week, I'm working a long time. I said like 3 hours when I come home. I have long days. So for people that have a very a big battery where they could do those long days and then take the weekend to recharge, that's one method that have definitely helped. Like I mentioned before, being able to really focus in will allow you to get your work done quicker and then have more free time. But I think it's so important to find that balance, because if you don't take time to recharge, a lot of the information that's going to be provided to you, it's not going to stick. So you need to find those times. And there are ways. I mean, just another quick one, like I commute. So I have a decent commute, about 45 minutes a day. And yeah, yeah. Yeah, you get used to it after a while. But I listen to my lectures. I just like a podcast, and I'll listen to them on the way to work. Or if there's even a podcast that's applicable to one of the classes I'm taking. So I'm taking a negotiation class right now. And there's a podcast that really talks about exactly what I'm learning in class. So I'll listen to that on the way to work and just try to utilize my time and make sure, even that, we'll say, an hour and 30 during the day that I'm traveling, it's not going to waste.
I love that, the way of treating your school like a podcast and kind of baking it into your existing routines. That's so smart. Amazing. Okay, we have a question from John about the rotational program that you worked in. Can you talk a little bit more just about the rotational program, maybe some of the pros of having participated in a rotational program, and like, is that something that's common in the engineering industry, or is that something that's very specific to RTX?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I feel like the rotational program has been so important to my development and growth thus far. So for us at RTX, there's an engineering rotational program, and all the different disciplines has their own. And this includes, for 8 months to a year, you're in one specific job in a specific discipline. And then after that year is up, you move on to a totally different role. So as in my experience, I was in structures engineering, and then I moved on to manufacturing engineering. Now, for me, we talked about network before. I have an extremely vast network across different disciplines because of that. For example, the other day, somebody from my first rotation reached out to me for a test that was going on in the test center that I work at now. And I was able to really just get them all the information, help them out, and streamline the whole process for them. So that networking aspect, it's huge. Alongside, we talked a little bit about getting to know what makes you happy, what makes you feel fulfilled. Those opportunities to rotate between different disciplines really just allows you to see more of the company. And I would say they're common. Yeah, like at Pratt Whitney, they're very common. I know one of my friends, she works for Amgen, and they have a rotational program as well. So those rotational programs are extremely valuable. I would say in your search, try to find those. They really speak volumes for your career, especially if you do them early on.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard a couple of other terms for rotational programs across different industries too. Like I've talked to folks at L'Oreal, they have a management trainee program where you get to go through different parts of the organization to learn more and get that exposure. So I think that's a really cool opportunity that you were given. And I love that you were able to get that experience and build your network so robustly early on. Okay, I want to pivot a little bit. You talked a little bit about, you have a mechanical engineering background, and now you're obviously in the aerospace industry. Anna is asking whether you had any trouble finding your current role with a mechanical engineering degree, and do you think it will be hard to find a role if you specialize in something like aerospace? So it might be a little bit specific there, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, great question, Anna. So I would say mechanical's really good degree because it gives you a wide range. If you think about some of the classes that you'll take, if for those of you who are mechanical, you just take a really wide range of classes that allows you to be applicable to a lot of different disciplines. And that's really, I just talked about mechanical, but that's pretty wide, especially the first couple years of school. You're taking a lot of different classes. So I would say some jobs require specific degrees. And if you're mechanical, you're definitely in good shape. But there's also postings that just require a engineering degree. For those of you who are engineers, it's challenging to make it through, and you got to work really hard in school in order to get that degree. And a lot of companies recognize that. You have an ability to learn, you have ability to think through problems, which they're really looking for. So there is opportunity to get different positions. And the other thing is, once you get in a company and you start to meet a lot of people, I mean, at that point, it's really about the work that you've done and the people that you know. So opportunities open as you once you're in the industry. So even if it's not happening right now, just stay patient. Once you start working, you'll start to meet new people from different groups. And if you want to make a pivot from there, it will be much easier.
I think that's really great insight. Thank you. And kind of on a similar vein, we have a question from Katarina, who is somebody that does not have an engineering specific degree, but they graduated with a biochem major instead, but they're really interested in aeronautics. And they're asking how much in your experience of engineering is picked up via practical experience? Like how much did you learn on the job versus how much came from your formal education? And do you think that there's a place for folks who maybe don't necessarily have an engineering degree to find their footing in the aerospace world?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question. And it's great that you're in STEM because I think STEM degrees are super important. They allow you to that broader range I was saying where they're really looking for specific types of people. As long as you're in STEM, you're in a good spot. A lot of it you learn on the job. I mean, there is aspects that you could relate to some of the stuff you've learned in school, but primarily everything that you're doing is very specific to the product that you have. For example, for engines, for us, the product itself is a totally new learning experience. And it helps a lot of the stuff you've done in school, but by nature, a lot of it is growing and learning on the job. For bio, I would say, I know for chemists, I alluded to more coatings and materials or fuel engineers levels. So I would look for those type of roles, try to understand what processes are applicable to what you do. And just maybe do some research. Yeah, talk to an AI bot, right? Try to figure out what you do is applicable to a certain product in an industry, and then go from there.
Really great advice. Thank you so much. And we have a great question from Nick as well. You mentioned the importance of communication as a skill in engineering. And he's wondering how you might use that skill when you're in the first parts of the application process. So, it seems like getting past that application phase and into the interview phase is oftentimes before you have the chance to really communicate one-on-one with somebody. I know you mentioned a little bit about the opportunities that you might have on Handshake to reach out and communicate directly with somebody. Do you have any more advice there for how you might be able to demonstrate your communication skills before you've actually had an interview with somebody?
Absolutely. I would say being very responsive, being quick to respond. Through email, you just have to show how engaged you are.
Mhm.
And by showing that to an employer, it will be a token of respect. Somebody
Mhm.
that's a little bit not responsive, you don't really show that you want the job. Being able to format your emails so that they're clear and they're understanding,
Mhm.
that helps significantly. And even if you reach out to a couple, use Handshake to reach out to a couple different people. So we'll say Pratt Whitney has a position and you got through the first stage, your application's out there, and now you're communicating with a recruiter. You could still use Handshake to find other people that work there. And those people could potentially put in a good word if you get a 15, 20-minute conversation with them to the recruiting manager about you. So it's just taking further steps in order to put yourself out there and make yourself known.
I love it. And what a great note to end on. I also just resurfaced your Handshake profile in the chat there for anybody who is looking to connect with you. I want to thank you so much for giving us your time and your wisdom. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And to everybody in the audience, if you have a moment, please take 30 seconds to fill out our feedback survey in the chat so that we can continue to bring you awesome events like this one in the future and awesome speakers like Anthony, so we can learn a little bit more about what you want to see and who you want to hear from. And for that, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Anthony, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye. Thank you.